Welcome to Mission Majjhima. Ajahn. Ajahn, so tell us about Majjhima number 13, the Mahādukkhakkhandha Sutta.
So the discourse on the greater mass of suffering is a really brilliant sutta. It's also somewhat harrowing in the sense that we get a very lengthy rundown of the depth of our folly. And so in it, we have a bunch of monks who go and speak with wanderers of other sects and ask, the wanderers of other sects ask what the difference is between the Buddha's teaching and their own, seeing as they purport also to describe the complete comprehension of these three main realms of experience: sensuality, forms, or some translations say the body, but I think forms is probably broader and more accurate, and feelings. The monks reporting it to the Buddha ask if that was what the Buddha would say in response. And the Buddha says, although these wanderers might say that they preach a complete understanding of these, without understanding and describing comprehension of all three of these realms in terms of what we can call the gratification triad, which is understanding each of these in terms of the attraction, the asada, the drawback, the adinava, and the escape, the nisarna, that one cannot say to have truly understood the completely any of these three realms. And then he goes through a brilliant exposition of all three. So the attraction of sensuality being just the glow or the satisfaction you get from the five chords of sensual pleasure, namely the different sense contact. The drawback is an amazing exposition of paragraph after paragraph of all the crescendo of suffering which we bring about through pursuit of the sensuality. And the escape is abandoning delight and lust for sensuality. The escape is actually the same in all three cases, just that abandonment of delight and lust, chandaraga. For form, he describes the attraction as a beautiful form of a woman. This is addressed to bhikkhus, so I'm sure there'd be an equivalent for a different congregation. And the drawback is the decay of that form into death and a skeleton, etc. The escape, similarly, abandoning delight and lust. And feelings, the attraction are the height or the apex of feeling, which in the Buddhist conception is the four jhanas. And the drawback is this simple line that all feelings are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. And the escape is, once again, abandoning of delight and lust. So it's a brilliant sutta, and one I'm really glad we've made our way to here. So, Ajahn, what have you found to be interesting and most worth drawing out of this?
Yeah, I find that gratification triad, as you call it, to be just fascinating. It's one of the Buddha's many frameworks, the schema that he gives. I think of it almost as like a meat grinder. You can put these different things into it, and it really just, you see how the sausage is made, basically, like how you can also think of it as a Buddhist cost-benefit analysis, whereas in addition to cost and benefit, the gratifications and the drawbacks, you also see the alternative, so cost-benefit alternative, CBA analysis, or a three-step reality check is another way to frame it. And that's great. It's the Buddha really removing our fascination with things. Oftentimes we just latch on to one thing that we like. The phrasing that he uses with regards to forms seen by the eye, sounds, smells, taste, touch, which are wished for, desired, desirable, agreeable, likable, connected with sensual desire, and provocative of lust. Just that the Buddha kind of foregrounds that that's really how most people interact with the world, is they try to increase those things. But to be able to look, there is a gratification, there is something that we like there, it's likable, but there's also a drawback to that, and then there's an escape. So I just love that framework, and the Buddha offering us in this sutta kind of a schematic mapping of those three realms that you spoke of sensuality and form, or also translated as sights by Bhante Sujato, and of feelings into this meat grinder of the gratification triad is just fascinating. And for yourself, Ajahn, what do you find most interesting?
I think that's a great rundown, and the Buddhist cost-benefit analysis, that's beautiful. I think the fact that the Buddha says that is what constitutes full comprehension, with the handful of leaves saying, you don't have to understand necessarily the whole intricacy of each of these things, but rather, if you just understand what the attraction is and what the drawback is, and when you measure those correctly, understanding they're unworthy of giving ourselves to and of investing our hearts in, that this is as much comprehension as is needed. This is full comprehension. And then just I think some suttas you don't need to necessarily draw out any hidden insights so much as just look at what the Buddha is giving to us on the page or in the sutta. And in this case, just the depth of our folly, with the gratification of sensuality being so middling, and then the crescendo of the level of suffering that comes from it. And reading it is just visceral and utterly relatable. Everything from trying to, gain the wealth to feed that sensuality in us, to the desire to protect it and inability to, made off by hateful heirs, by kings, by floods. And from there on to even worse levels of conflict, including the impressive description of all the torture devices that were, available at the time. So it's just that him laying out that equation so starkly, it really makes clear the level of our delusion. And then where the brilliance I find for his going through the gratification triad in the sense of sensuality is in the length of the drawbacks, the adinava. What I find so fascinating about the gratification triad in the case of feelings is the simplicity of the drawback. It's just that all feelings, no matter how refined, are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. And in the end, they can't be a refuge. But that simple indictment of even that. The one other thing I'd add is that that gratification triad is so helpful because truly, until we understand what's attracting us to something, often we'll ignore the downsides, but there's moments, say with anger, where we feel the pain of it, but we don't quite understand what keeps drawing us to it. And that the Buddha's saying that you need to understand that as well to let go. So with anger, for example, just the sense of kind of power and aliveness and a rush that draws us back to that state. It's, as you said, just a very powerful meat grinder to run all experience through, and it leads to a lot of insights. So, Ajahn, what have you found relevant for your practice?
Honestly, in rereading this, and I think when I read it for the first time, definitely before I ordained, just feeling so much gratitude for the Buddha to put it out so clearly. It's like, okay, yeah, there is this gratification, but it's only so much, and the drawbacks are so extensive. So, yeah, when the Buddha's talking about the drawbacks and the gratifications, that's somewhat medieval terms, or the tortures are quite antiquated, but work life, it still has all its drawbacks as it did 2,500 years ago, and all the stress and working for someone else and not having a sense of agency is still all the same today, and that there is an alternative. Also pointing to the results of how sensuality leads to war, and it's the same today. All the grabs for oil and basically seeing this exact connection between my own cravings and addictions and our society's need for plastic and oil and gasoline. is just all the more pertinent and harmful today. So, Ajahn, what is the word of the day?
The word of the day is raga. And what's the definition, Ajahn?
So raga can be translated as passion or desire, craving. It comes from the root raj, which means either to desire or to color. So somewhat cognate with the French word rouge or the English word rouge, to paint your face, that which colors the self, colors the face, colors experience. So,
Well, thank you, Ajahn.